And then we've been reaching out and found, like, so we have PD Pablo as the voice of Jones, which
I
has
found
been,
that too
which is
hilarious.
yeah, which is cool and a bit surreal, to be honest, because like I remember listening to PD Pablo with my brother, like way back. We're playing, I don't know, World of Warcraft, not World of War, where were we playing? Warcraft 3 or some game like that with like, PD in the
Yeah.
background.
How
It's
did
just
how
it's crazy.
just expand on that? How did you even get him like just to agree to do the show?
What's up, y'all? It's Crypto Kenzie, man. Man, y'all already know what time it is. It's time for crypto and culture. Let's go.
What's going on, crypto cousins? It's your Bitcoin baby daddy here with another episode of Crypto and Culture. Today we have Robert Allen, producer of Bitcoin and Friends, and I'm so excited to get him on the show because if you guys don't remember, I did a quick reaction video to the first episode of Bitcoin and Friends, one of the funniest crypto related channel on YouTube, adult rated channel on YouTube. But I don't want to big up the show too much. I just want to go ahead and introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are.
Hey, good to be here, Mackenzie. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, you can big up the show as much as you want. We need help getting the word out there, so
All right.
don't feel bad about that. Yeah, I mean, I've been in Bitcoin since around 2014. Used to work in precious metals. I was a broker in New York for a couple of years there, working for a guy named Peter Schiff, who's now one of Bitcoin's biggest haters.
Oh my God.
So
Oh
I don't know
my
if you've
God.
ever seen him on Twitter
I'm
going hard on
just
Bitcoin, but he's
going crazy. Going crazy. I love, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut off, but
no, cool. Jump in.
I just love the fact that he is like popular for hating Bitcoin so much. And in my head, I'm like, this guy has to have stacks. He's stacking sats like crazy. And
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like,
possible.
I guarantee it. He accepts Bitcoin on his gold website. I'm sure
Yeah,
he's stacking sats. But no, go
it's
ahead.
possible.
Continue some more about yourself. Your
Yeah, well, that
background in the
was
precious
the last
metals.
the last thing I did when I worked for Peter was convince him, and I guess it was actually more the president who I worked with at that point, his cousin Michael. But anyway, I convinced Michael to set up with BitPay so we could take payments using Bitcoin for precious metals. So anyway, Peter can thank me for all the hate he gets about that now. But yeah, it's very possible that he has a little bit he's holding on to, and he's just playing a game. I hope so. I hope for his sake he does own some, but I don't know. I'm really not sure. So, but anyway, that my intro into Bitcoin was through that sort of sound money, hard money world. Gold was backing the U.S. dollar for, I would argue, most of the when the country was growing most, and we had really the most economic growth was during the time when we were on a gold standard, which was basically from the beginning of the founding of the country until 1913 is when the Fed was created, and it took about 50 years for them to fully remove gold backing from the currency. But anyway, so that's for people who maybe are watching who are not familiar with the Federal Reserve or monetary history, I would definitely do some researching and digging. There's a lot of good books. One called "The Creature from Jekyll Island." It's a little bit long,
Yes. Oh no, I'm halfway
but
through it now.
yeah, that's a great book, and it really goes over the history there. And so the American public has really been robbed by some corrupt bankers and politicians starting in 1913, and so we're about 100 years plus into this. Really, what is, I would argue, kind of a crazy experiment, you could call it. I mean, or just full on stagecoach robbery. But when you control the currency as these people have been doing for the last 100 years, and you can print it whenever you want. Well, I mean, just think about it. Most people go to work every day, and they spend their time and their effort to earn dollars, and then you've got a small subset of Americans who can just go to a computer and press a button and make as many of those dollars as they want and give them to themselves, to their buddies. So this is obviously fraudulent and pretty immoral if you think about it for even a few seconds. But this is the world that we were all born into. But Bitcoin really is probably our only sort of life raft for those of us who want to have a better future. And so yeah, I got super excited about Bitcoin when I learned about it. left precious metals and that whole world, which I think, gold didn't work because governments were able to go and basically seize it from banks, right? Because it's cumbersome. You can't really use gold to go buy things. It's just it's not a feasible way to do business. And so, gold ended up being put into vaults, and then people were trading paper certificates, gold backed dollars or other certificates before that. But so point is that that system had a lot of benefits to it, but it broke down for several reasons, including mostly because the gold was centralized in vaults. Government took it. So that system's broken, and I think Bitcoin is an upgrade in that same vein. So for the gold bugs out there, I wish they would come on board, because we're pretty much on the same train in terms of our way of thinking about the world, but they're, in my opinion, kind of stuck in the past to some degree. But yeah, so that's how I got into Bitcoin. And then about a year and a half ago, roughly at this point, my brother approached me with an idea for a cartoon, and told me about this idea about how Bitcoin could puke up the block reward every 10 minutes, and that would be, a really fun way to illustrate that. And so that to me was sort of an immediate like light bulb moment. And the thought was that, yeah, this is a really good idea that we can play with. There's a lot we can do with it. And so we started talking and fleshing it out, and now we are three episodes in. We're working on episode 4. Hopefully we get the show picked up by a network someday. That's our hope, because we'd love for this show to become popular enough that people all over the world can learn about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and the history of all this stuff. And ultimately, we're going to be really painting a cautionary tale of, while I do think it's interesting to have innovation in the space and that there's different people trying different things, I think that's laudable. But I also think that, economic reality is that Bitcoin, as they say, is a Schelling point, where basically, the monetary value is going to continue to push toward Bitcoin for a lot of reasons. There's a network effect there. There's just so much value in terms of developers and companies. And so I'm very, very, very bullish on Bitcoin. I'm not quite so interested anymore. I will admit honestly here that I had a bit of like a shit coin period in my life. And I'm moving past that now. And I think, my hope is that the show can really kind of coalesce people around this idea that if we can focus on Bitcoin, and I think the economic incentives are there. I think it's, the fact that it's limited to 21 million is extremely important. We don't want inflationary currency anymore. We see that that's a problem. And so bottom line is, I think Bitcoin has the credibility 10 years plus now. The development team is dispersed. There's huge amounts of decentralization in terms of the nodes on the network. And of course, we have Lightning Network, which is being worked on. I'm very excited about that. It's definitely not quite ready for prime time yet, but I encourage anyone who's into Bitcoin to start playing around and learning about that, because I think that's a layer, or a second layer, that's really going to help to scale this technology so we can actually use it for coffee someday, which is not a big deal right now, right? We don't want to spend our fortune away.
We don't want to jump too far ahead already.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so why a cartoon? Why a show? Because I always had this idea that like it's the younger audience that are going to be the one to really use the Bitcoin more than an older audience. So I wanted to know, why did you choose to make a cartoon show and not like a trading show or whatever show?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of trading shows out there. I think most of that is basically garbage also, to be honest. So, people don't know. If you really have some crystal ball, then, great, good for you. But like I've talked to a lot of these guys. My opinion is, if you can publish your trade history on a blockchain that's immutable, like use Bitcoin, and every time you make a trade, hash that into the Bitcoin blockchain so you can prove that you didn't fudge with the numbers. If you can really prove your record, maybe I'll even give you some of my money to trade. But I think most of the time these people are delusional. So that's another big caveat. If you're getting into Bitcoin, I would just stay far away from any of these trade guru types, because I think they're going to probably take your money or cause you to lose the little bit of Bitcoin that you may have. And so, But yeah, so there's plenty that whole thing is saturated, and I think it's a joke.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, why a cartoon? Well, I mean, it's still not cheap to produce, but I would say definitely compared to like live action stuff, this is quite a bit more more doable. So we're spending on the first episode. Of course, it was our first attempt in doing an animated show, and we probably overspent a bit, but I think we spent about 45,000, mostly paying animators, is where most of that cost was. Episode 2, we got down closer to like 25, 30,000. And I think we're hoping to try to be in like the 20K per episode range, or even lower if we can help it. But when you compare that to producing, a live action series of any sort, it's probably an order of magnitude less, a couple $100,000 to put together a really nice, series of, even probably one episode. 100K is probably not unreasonable if you're going live action. So,
Ooh.
yeah, I mean, again, of course, there's a lot of factors there, and I mean, you can always throw something together with a camcorder and some buddies. But I mean, if you want to really make it like top quality and make sure the lighting and the camera work and the acting and all that stuff is there, it could be very expensive. So yeah, and I think also it's just cartoon medium is a lot of fun for comedy, because you really can kind of you can do things like having Bitcoin puke up, block
Yeah.
reward and stuff like that. That just doesn't really lend itself to live action. So, and also we really like Chris and I, we really like cartoons. Like we love South Park. We've been big fans of that show for decades.
Satire. A lot
Yeah,
of satire.
we like satirical, comedy cartoons. Obviously, Rick and Morty is a great show as well, which we also enjoy. So there's a lot of stuff out there
the new age of Futurama right there.
Yeah, Futurama is good too. Simpsons. There's a whole litany of good shows in this sort of vein, and we felt like so there's already a little bit of a built-in market there in terms of these sort of adult cartoons, and that also lends itself, because we wanted to be able. If we're talking about technology like Bitcoin, it's already kind of complex and difficult, so it probably wouldn't really fly. I mean, I'm sure you could do a children's version, but we didn't want to do that. We wanted to do something for adults.
Something for the community, something that the community can understand, and something that the community can enjoy.
Right.
All right. Exactly. So I wanted to go ahead and get into like the first episode. So just like break down the first episode for me, because I know I reacted to it, but just your thought process on going through like the first episode and what you believe should happen, and how you pretty much said, hey, we can put all this in the first episode, but let's leave this out, and then we'll continue that further to the next episode.
Right. So episode 1, we wanted to introduce, obviously, the sort of like the character issues, the position that Bitcoin finds himself in. So introducing Satoshi, obviously, and the birth of Bitcoin, the creation of Bitcoin, whatever you want to call it. And then really just kind of setting up what is this world that he's finding himself in, and then giving him connection with a few characters who are ultimately going to be some of the big characters in the show, like Jones, Metallic, Harold. And so just kind of setting the stage, and hopefully giving people enough to keep them coming back and wanting to see more. And then, of course, we end with Hal Finney, or Hal 50 as we call him in the show. But he's the first person to send Bitcoin transactions with Satoshi, the very beginning of Bitcoin. I think if I remember right, he's the person who spun up the first node, aside from what Satoshi was running himself.
Right.
So this guy
I remember he's like the first comment in Twitter running Bitcoin. That tweet is like famous now.
Yeah. So he's an OG, crypto guy, and a big part of helping Bitcoin succeed in the very beginning. Kind of like a doula or like a midwife,
Oh my God. All right. But I wanted to go ahead. You go into Bitcoin's history in the second episode. This is when we run into Ross. And I didn't react on that yet, but I do like how the fact that you're not afraid to actually speak on the original history of Bitcoin and how it grew. and
Sure.
just not having that fear of showing people, no, the original people that did use this were individuals that were trying to buy anything online to show that it worked, even if it was illicit drugs or such, but being able to use this, like, I guess, new monetary policy online.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's very important, that, we tell the history of Bitcoin. Of course, the show, caveat is that we do take a lot of liberties, and I think in many ways it's more meant to be like almost if you could imagine a parallel universe that sort of rhymes with reality, but is definitely not reality, right?
Right.
So that's one big caveat. But yes, I mean, for sure, Bitcoin, was used, still is used for purchasing drugs online.
Not the smartest
Um,
thing.
yeah, I mean, perhaps not. Although, I mean, Ross Ulbricht, assuming that he was, the Dread Pirate, which is still, I think, arguably
Yeah,
maybe not proven, but
yeah, it can't. Not really, in my opinion. Not really
yeah,
proven.
yeah, but let's say he is. He wanted to allow people to come up with a better, safer way to transact. Because the bottom line is, the reason why illicit drug trafficking and trade is dangerous is because it is illegal. You can't go to a court if there's a problem. But if you remove the in-person meeting with people and you allow people to transact online and ship these drugs, then you can reduce a lot of the potential for violence there. And Ross is, and I'm in the same boat as him. We're libertarians, and we think
Right.
that drug use is obviously on a personal level, it can be very damaging to people, but for to be deluded enough to think that the government is going to solve that problem by making it illegal is crazy, and it's proven through history to not work. When alcohol was prohibited in the 20s,
Yeah.
I mean, you had huge amounts of violence. Al Capone and all these gangsters running around, with Tommy guns, shooting each other and bystanders and all sorts of problems.
And then certain
So
individuals in the background getting rich.
right, of course, and yeah, like in any paradigm where there is something that's prohibited, some people are going to benefit, others are not going to. But in general, it doesn't lead to a safer society. It doesn't lead to a freer society to have these, quote this war on drugs and this really ridiculous approach to it. And then also if you just look around a little bit, if you look at countries like Portugal, where they've decriminalized all drugs, they've actually seen a decrease in drug use across the board. So yeah, I mean these things need to be talked about, and prohibiting is not working. And so anyway, Bitcoin, yeah, was used and is used to buy these substances.
Tell me more about so we'll just probably get into the little drama, but I know
Yeah,
recently you just dropped the Litecoin video. You dropped that today, and I
yeah.
found that to be very funny. So how are you combating with some of the drama that you're probably getting from other I guess other projects or other individuals?
Sure, sure. Well, this has been a little bit of an evolution with the show, to be honest. When we first thought of this show and started working on it, Chris and I's goal was sort of this idea of like, hey, we're going to just get everyone to get along and agree to disagree. And, it's going to be a way to kind of, smooth over these differences between communities. I think for me, and I think Chris to some degree is coming in this direction, that I'm becoming pretty much a Bitcoin maximalist in the last 6 months or so.
Um, how is the, I guess, the producing progress? Finding actors and finding writers. And I mean, is it you and your brother? As you said, your brother or your uncle? I forget.
Oh, my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it you and your brother just writing every episode? How are you able to find the actors?
Well, I mean, I think like anything, it's definitely been a process, and trial and error has been a big part of it. Uh, so we found like the first episode I mentioned, we paid quite a bit too much
Right.
for that. Part of that was because we hired like a production company, and essentially we were paying a middleman or a middle woman. In this case, it was a woman, but we kind of paid her to basically just connect us to like a studio in another country, and and we overpaid. So part of it has been that we've been learning how to actually produce, and so like now we have animators that we work with mostly in the Philippines, and we know those animators and work with them directly. And so we've cut out, some of those pain points. In terms of, we also have, I mean, a pretty bigger than just Chris and I. We have a pretty solid core team. So we have Berdian Torres, who is our lead artist,
Okay.
and Chris knew him from a couple of years back. And anyway, he's a really talented, really talented artist, really fun, asset to the team. And so he's been bringing the bulk of the character design work has been coming from him. We're really happy with what he's doing, and he's been a huge part of the team. We also have Jake, Jumper Jake, as I think he's credited mostly in the show, but he's a friend of ours and works closely with us. He's been doing, helping with production, and also does the voice of Metallic and a bunch of other characters in the show. And he's super talented. Chris does the voice of Bitcoin and a few others. Also, I think just naturally really gifted in that way. And then we've been reaching out and found, so we have PD Pablo as the voice of Jones.
I found that too hilarious.
Which is cool and a bit surreal, to be honest, because I remember listening to PD Pablo with my brother, way back. We're playing, I don't know, World of Warcraft, not World of Warcraft, where were we playing? Warcraft 3 or some game like that with PD in the background.
Just expand on that. How did you even get him just to agree to do the show? Is he like a secret Bitcoin maximalist or something?
I actually don't think he's really too far into Bitcoin or anything yet, and we would love to change that. So hopefully we will. But Chris actually just reached out, I think, to his manager. Somehow found information online, reached out to his manager, and just said, "Hey, this is the show we're doing. We think this would be good for Petey and his career, and this is what we can pay." And it just worked out that he was interested, and so so that's been really, really cool. I think that about covers it. I mean, we're starting to do more animation in-house now using a program called Character Animator. If anyone watching knows Character Animator or is willing to learn, we might be able to pay you at some point in the future. Caveat with the show is this is bootstrapped. We don't have a lot of money. We've spent quite a bit of our own money to make this thing happen. So we're not, you're not going to get rich working with us right away.
It's the long-term goal. It's the long-term vision.
Yeah, long-term vision. If you believe in what we're doing, reach out, especially if you can do some animation.
How can people help? How can people help you guys reach your goal? I know I have. Let me see if I can find my shirt, just to shill it a little bit. Hold on.
I love that you got that shirt, by the way.
There we go, you guys.
Yeah, so that's the inside of Bitcoin. Caveat is that is all nonsense, because Bitcoin is not a coin that runs around with software inside of him, but it's a fun little toy kind of.
But
idea.
So you guys have a merch store, you guys have a website so that you guys can support. I know you guys get funding and donations from other projects to help build each episode.
Yeah. So we've had sponsors, and that's really the main way that we're paying for these episodes. So we've had Loom, which is an Ethereum sidechain type project, and then a few other things. Celsius Network, so that's been cool, and we're hoping that we can continue to see good companies come along. Really, fingers crossed that we'll actually get some Bitcoin companies to back us. That's to me would be preferable, given that the show is called Bitcoin and Friends after all. So we'll see. But yeah, so that's obviously donating, buying merch. We just set up a Patreon because we were a little frustrated. We got some crypto donations in the early stages of the project, but that seemed to dry up a lot. So what our hope is that we could get, even if we had a few thousand people giving us a couple dollars a month, that'd be more than enough to fund, the project. I know obviously Patreon is not a crypto project, but my honest opinion is if you have Bitcoin, you should hold on to that. And then, if you got a little bit of fiat money coming in, spend some of that and help us out.
No. Like I said, I'll leave links to the website, the Patreon page. The Patreon page is up, right?
Yeah, it's up. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
It's
I'll leave links to the website, the Patreon page, and everything in the descriptions below.
but I'm excited about the future of the show. We're going to keep working hard, and thank you for your time and support and everything.
But I just want to say thank you so much, Alan, for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. You can better believe that I'm going to react to the next 2 episodes just to make sure that
Cool.
people know more about Bitcoin and Friends, and just give it some time and be able to learn about Bitcoin in a way they didn't expect.
Cool.
And
Appreciate
where can they find you again?
So the show is on YouTube. If you just Google Bitcoin and Friends, and you'll find all our stuff. But btcandfriends.com is the website. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter. Follow us, Facebook, all those places. So yeah, please support, follow, retweet, help us get the word out. Thank you.
All right. Other than that, guys, check me out next time. Take it easy. Peace.